I think biggest takeaway being in Uncaged has been connections of people that I've been able to meet, other business owners, other entrepreneurs, just other guys, going through the same situations, same life processes, right? I mean, all of our lives are a little bit different, but at the end of the day, the steps that we take, the things that we do, how we approach our day, it there has to be some semblance of similarity, obviously tailored to yourself and to what your life is like. But the biggest thing is just, going through it with other guys, at all different levels, right? Because some people are ahead, some people are behind, some guys are at the same level as you. So you've got this whole kind of like network of people that you can look up to that are ahead of you in certain areas, right? Because when I say ahead, I'm not just talking about financially, like I'm talking health, right? Because some of the guys that are the healthiest are not ahead of me financially. Some of the guys that are financially ahead of me may not be ahead of me health wise. They may not be ahead of me in relationship status, right? It's like you got this really cool mix of people and guys that are, in all these different places that you can pull on, utilize, ask questions to, and like I said, just kind of go through life together, go through all these little tough points. That's been my biggest takeaway in that sense of like it's finding your crew, finding your group of people, and then going through it together because nobody's life is perfect, right? Nobody's situation is perfect. And so surrounding yourself with people that you can get along with, know well enough to share stuff with makes a huge difference, right? That's I think my biggest takeaway from all of this has just been that level of connection matters more than anything else.
No, I think that's 100% true. And like that's, if you're listening to this, like this channel, what's so cool about these stories is this is the journey to the top 1%. And if you've been listening to this channel, it's by becoming 1% better daily. And the best way to do that is surrounding yourself with other guys that are doing it in all walks of life. Because to Paul, your point, like you might be ahead of someone in one area, which means you have access to more information than they do, and you get to share that with them. And it's almost like this like trading token because then if they've got some access to information that you don't, you get to trade that. But no, man, I'm really excited to have you on the show, bro. Like tell the guys who you are, what you do, and let's get into it, man.
Yeah. So my name is Paul Childers. I own Blue Sky Biz Solutions. Who I am, first and foremost, I'm a husband. Been going on 16 years of marriage here this coming June. I'm a father of two kids. I've got a daughter and a boy. And I'm just trying to build my own business out right now to support our lifestyle and to get that freedom. And what we do is we help other businesses unstuck themselves financially from debt, credit cards, loan sources, and move as much stuff as they can off of themselves personally over onto their business so that they're not carrying such a burden and have the freedom to pursue the things that they want to do.
Oh yeah, man. Dude, some of these people, not to get all the way into it, but dude, you want to talk about some fucking handcuffs? I mean, I know just offline we were talking about a dude with like $10,000 a day in payments. Like just that's some wild shit when you really start to break down like some of these businesses that are so quote unquote successful. And I'm by no means am I saying some of these people that you're working with aren't, but it's like there's to the point that we were talking about earlier, like there's little tweaks inside their organization that would just take it to the complete next level. So, I mean, the shit that y'all are doing over there is it's honestly it's mind blowing because like I'm sure you deal with it all day every day, so it's like elementary stuff to you, but it's unheard of. Like the amount of people that have no idea that you can get like business lines of credit that don't have any attachment to a personal guarantee of yours fucking blows my mind.
Yeah, it's pretty commonplace, right? And it's a pretty common thing for us to just kind of do for business owners, I think in general, to just kind of do what the social norms are, right? We tend to be fairly impulsive in some areas, where it's like, man, I need access to some money. So then we just go wherever we can to get that access without thinking about the actual like long-term consequences of those decisions. And that statement right there can go and get applied to pretty much any area of your life, right? Like we go and do something without thinking about the long-term, situation. But if there's one thing I've learned doing this, it's that it doesn't really matter how successful your business looks on the outside. If you don't know how to run things internally and keep things clean and keep things structured and organized, you're essentially just a house of cards.
No, for sure. And it kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier. Like, dude, I don't care if it's Uncaged, another group, you name it. Like, I would say, like, one of the things that makes Uncaged so much fun because we do see this like success because, you have some of these other groups are just people that are inherently like just focused on education, 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 and then never apply it, which to uncage, perspective, like having the accountability to actually doing the fucking work is really cool. Because again, right off air, we were just bragging about one of the guys in Uncaged, and some of the success he's seeing. But the thing is he's coming and trading information with me. He's trading information with you. He's learning, but then he's going out and actually doing the shit. And it's just been monumental for him. And so, to your first point, it's really cool to see the guys inside the group come together and like shit, like I've leaned on you to learn how to improve Uncaged from a business funding and business line of credit standpoint and business credit. And then like you've leaned on me where you've needed to. And so it's cool to see this camaraderie of people understanding that like working together, like it's that old adage that if you want to go somewhere fast, you go alone. If you want to go somewhere far, you go together. So what's your thoughts on that?
I think the more people that you involve and the more people that you affiliate with that align with your goals and your purpose in life, right? Like I think that just makes everything easier because again, you're sharing the burden of experiences. So like I think one of the cooler parts of all of this is a lot of times it's a pretty decent group of guys that are entrepreneurs, but there's a mix of guys that are still W-2. But the cool part is like, and this goes back to shared experiences, is like some of these W-2 guys are really trying to break off of those chains, right? They're really trying to break out of it. And you can see the the timidity of it of, well, I'm scared to do this, where all of us that have been doing this now for a few years are just like, motherfucker, just jump in and do it. There is no right time. And it's the same thing with like kids, with marriage. Like there is no right time. Something's always going to go wrong. Something's always going to break. Something's going to go sideways on you. Shit's going to go blow up. Like stuff's going to break. Your wife's going to be pissed at you for some reason. Your kids are going to hate you for a short period of time. Your business is going to go broke for a little bit of time. You're going to grind through, right? Like, so if you're committed to it and you feel like at the core that you need to go do something, like go do it. And I think that's the power of proximity is probably like the biggest thing with this group is like, yeah, that's cool. Like jump in and go, right? But if you don't want to, then figure out how to be a badass at what it is that you're doing and maximize that spot. Because entrepreneurship isn't for everybody. And I think that's an important thing for people to understand too. Like some people just are not cut out for this. I didn't necessarily think I was cut out for it, but here I am 3 years in and we're making, big progress. Being kind of off the beaten path from what most people are in my industry of not having any direct ties to any lenders, right? Because our whole purpose is helping people manage money without the incentive of taking more debt out. So kind of a different positioning, but that's the proximity of the group, right? Because this evolved from getting feedback from the group and from different viewpoints and from different people. And over 2 years, 3 years, going into 3 years, like it's just kind of turned into this thing. And so that wouldn't happen if you're not surrounded with that group of people that have different perspectives, different thoughts, different careers, different experiences, right? The shared experience thing, I think, is probably one of the biggest things.
No, that's awesome. And I've actually been talking about it a lot recently. Um, And so, like, if you've heard it from my mouth, like, I apologize for the reiteration. But I grew up listening to Rob Dyrdek, and Rob Dyrdek, one of the big things that he always talked about was like, making your own luck. And um, so I started like diving into that a lot more, and, like, literally this last week, because I just heard it so much, like, not necessarily make your own luck, but just people talking about lucky versus unlucky people. And so, dove deeper because, my affiliation from like my skater background and stuff, so Rob Dyrdek was who I was listening to, right? And then like, so I went down that rabbit hole, and then, there's a Bruce Lee quote that is very similar about, creating your own luck by, capitalizing on opportunities as they approach. It's not verbatim, but same gist. And then this book that we're reading inside of Uncaged recently mentioned a study done between lucky and unlucky people. I think it was it's like Choose the Life You Want to Live is the book that we're reading. And this is like choice 16, I believe is what it was. And so then I took that and went even further with that and looked up the research it was referencing. And Dr. Richard Wiseman did a study on a group of self-proclaimed and what other people claimed were lucky people, and one self-proclaimed and what other people would claim were unlucky people. And they ran a series of behavioral and psychological studies on them and found out that the lucky people just took more chances. Like they saw more opportunities. They always looked for the positive in everything. And because they were not attached to like a specific outcome, it lowered their like stress and anxiety level when decision making, which then allowed them to recognize opportunities as they approach. And like a simple test, and it sounds pretty wild, but one of the tests was they gave people a newspaper and they told them to count how many pictures were in the newspaper. And the unlucky team they took like 2 or 3 minutes to go through it, and they counted every single one of the pictures one by one. But the lucky group on page 2, in big bold font, it says, "You can stop reading. There's 43 pictures in this entire newspaper." And so it's just wild to like, to go all the way back to something as simple as make your own luck. And like with the power of being in groups of people like Uncaged, is when you start to hear Paul seizing opportunities or looking at the positive outcomes of certain situations. And then you see Julian, and then you see Stoller, and then you see Jeff, and then you see Asa, and then you see Steve. Then you're like, fuck, man, like, oh, there's opportunity all around me. And I know for a fact you've experienced that because, like, bro, you fucking blown up in the last few years.
Yeah.
What's that ride been like, dude?
I don't know. I'm still on it.
Yeah,
It's fascinating in that regard, right? The whole I didn't grow I grew up in a good house. Like, right, we were pretty solid, like middle America. Dad had a good job. So like I grew up super comfortable. So like, when I first got into entrepreneurship, like one of my biggest struggles was like, well, hell, my life wasn't hard enough for me to be able to really be good at this, right? Because you see all these other people that are like, I was in prison for 15 years and I did this and I lived on the streets from the time I was 3 with a pack of dogs and now I'm a millionaire, blah, 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 right?
right.
And what I kind of started piecing together, and probably one of the biggest skill sets I've always just had naturally is kind of like reading between some of those lines of like, well, what's not being said, right? And at the end of the day, it was consistency, showing up, doing the things that you don't want to do when you need to do them, right? And this isn't health too. And I'll admit I'm not the perfect at it with my personal health, but like business wise, it's the same thing, right? Every day we're making posts. Every day we're interacting with people. Every day we're following up. Every day we're checking in with new people. We're making sure our calendar's full. We're training on like, other individuals. We're getting better at learning what it is that we're doing and understanding our niche. And it's been kind of cool to see how it builds as I've kind of shifted gears a little bit even. My messaging has always stayed pretty much the same. What I wanted to do was disassociate myself as much as I could with the actual like lending side of things, because what I've been finding is that when people reach out to you and they assume that you're associated with something that they maybe have a bad taste about or maybe don't fully understand what it is that you do, they don't give you as much information as they should. When people reach out to you and you're going about it from an absolutely unbiased, let me genuinely try to help you. And sometimes it's whether I get paid up front or not, right? Like there are cases where I just genuinely have to give people some advice and some guidance because they need it.
Mhm.
and not have that association of like, well, where's the hook here? What are you trying to get me into?
Mhm.
Right. And there are other lenders and brokers that are out there that, they'll claim they do the same thing and maybe to an extent that they do, but you're always going to have that underlying hook with that type of stuff where it's like, how do I get you into my loans portfolio and keep you in house to benefit me versus let's actually go find something that benefits you and is actually truly beneficial for you, even if it doesn't financially reciprocate itself back to me.
Mhm.
And everybody says they'll do that, but I can guarantee if you've got that subtle pull as a business owner, and this is good for business owners to really rethink their products too, especially depending on their service and the industries that they're in, is like if there's anything that subtly exists inside of your business or inside your mind that like is connected to income for you that could potentially be a reason why you're guiding people a certain way, you really need to assess and understand what that is. So you can either sell around it or you can understand why there's that pull, but also understand how to not rely on that while you're giving actual advice to clients and customers. So it's been fun growth, man. I'm excited to see where we go. I'm not 100% sure what that's all going to look like or what it's going to turn into, but it's every day it's been posting 3 to 4 times a day, being in groups, responding to people, and just giving as much education and value as I can when I'm out there. And it's starting to turn into something fairly large. So
No, man, I love it. And I love the transparency. And I think that's massively important. I'm at a really weird thought process on like where we are economically and just technologically as like a generation, because like our generation is such a transformative generation because the generation prior to us, they grew up without access to internet and electronics the way we did, but then the generation immediately after us knew nothing prior to that, and then you look at how far we've come, and like I honestly feel like it's this like wild transitional years, like the generation that got introduced to the automobile or airplanes, right? Like it's, with AI and everything that we have access to, because to your point, these people that have sales breath, like they have the one fucking thing and they're going to claim whatever they have to make this sell, whatever. I genuinely think, because a lot of times, and I've spoke about this prior, there was a study done. I can't, don't hold me to these exact numbers, but there was like a study done that was like our grandparents, so just 2 generations out, our grandparents on an average week would talk to like 12 people an entire week. Like you're talking about like the fucking mailman, the milkman, and the dude at the fucking general store down the road. Like, outside of like just some really very minuscule numbers. And then because of this transitional year with the internet or generation with the access to internet and even so much so you look at like the beginning days of like algorithms on all these social platforms where it was just untapped. You could make a post and literally thousands and thousands and thousands of people would see it. I say all this to say, I think that we have in our generation have seen the easiest time to run businesses digitally. And I think we're kind of in the cusp or in the middle of the hardest time because there's so much competition. It's so fucking cool to be a business owner now. Everyone that can throw a couple of bucks and spin up an EIN and fucking a Facebook page can make as many claims as they want. Now, obviously, there's supposed to be rules and regulations aside of that, but like for the ones that are truly trying to do the right thing, like morally and ethically, we have to be very, very specific, consistent, and disciplined on staying true to ourselves because there's so much opportunity to, in your mind, like give the good guy sales pitch and then just lock them into some predatory ass loan. You get a fat check on the front end and then they're stuck with all the risk and
yep.
barely any reward on the back end. So I definitely want to commend you on that. And like, let's kind of talk about that because in a world with so much competition where there is a lot of room for opportunity for you to be deceitful or have like ulterior motives behind like just the good guy you are, like What's that journey been like for you?
Yeah, I think, part of it is, number one, understanding, when I came out, I knew certain aspects of lending, right? I came from automotive, so I understood commercial fleet financing, like, because it's all the same once you get into the back end of OEMs, like the way you go about it and the way you approach it, it's literally the same thing, whether it's cars, heavy equipment, whatever, right? But what I didn't know, and there have definitely been some people that have been out there that have called me out on that side of things. It's like the lending side of things, right? So I signed up to go join a broker. And actually, before I even opened up Blue Sky, I had joined a company called J Galt, which is now a defunct company. And I was with them for about 4 months. And I've always had a pretty natural ability of just trusting my gut on things, seeing like again, kind of seeing that writing on the wall type of a deal where it's like, man, the stuff you guys are talking about really something's not right. I don't know exactly what it is, but something's not right. So left J Galt, went out on my own, joined a broker for loans, right? Part of the lending side was I realized like I don't want to build a process and chase loan documents all day because that's really what you end up doing as a lender is you just chase people around to get their information and get stuff provided to you. And like that's not what I wanted to do, number one. Number two was when I got into the back end of some of the lending side of things, I was like, man, this is way too easy for me to sell somebody on a solution that it might work for them and it might at the end of the day still be good for them. But like the major benefactor of this is me, right? Because I was able to mark it up so many points. I was able to do this. I was able to, right? Because they trust the information that you're providing to them. And don't get me wrong, like there's a time and place for all this stuff. But when I started seeing people that were coming in for loans, and when we started looking at their actual like business, I was going, well, you don't need a loan. You actually need to fix this. You actually need to do this. You actually need to go and get this stuff in place. You don't need a loan right now. You need to go get a bookkeeper. You need to go get a fractional CFO. You need to fix your marketing. You need to fix your conversion rates. You need to fix your handoffs between your account receivable and your sales department because you've got a delay here that's taking way longer for you to collect money because it's a broken process. You don't have standardized, systems in place to do this stuff. And so what I started doing was actually pulling more on my general manager like knowledge from when I was running the dealership and my sales director knowledge from when I was sales director for an ag tire company, but also on the leadership team of that company as well of like, well, let's step back here. Like, what's the actual like problem? And let's go find you an actual solution, not just a band-aid to slap on this that's going to compound it. And as I started doing that, um, you know, it definitely became an issue where it's like, okay, now I'm in direct conflict with a form of my business that pays me that I rely on to make a monthly living off of. And so I had to make a choice. Do I either stay connected to this directly and fight this constant internal conflict, or do I eliminate that piece from my business and not have that internal conflict and then figure out how to fill these other gaps in by providing above and beyond additional services other than just the business credit? Because business credit is necessary because I think nobody is really as separated as they think they are. But also, now that we have this in place, what are some other things that we need to be doing to make sure that we can get into good loans? Like make sure that our business is cash flowing properly, make sure that these processes aren't broken. And so tying that stuff all together, but I definitely had to learn that lending side from like what is all involved in the SBA side from an actual lender standpoint, what's involved with the line of credits, what's involved with credit cards. And so now that I've been over there and seen how that all works, now I can guide people a little bit better on, hey, here's what we need to avoid, here's what we need to ask, here's some things we need to do. Because there are people that are out there that like some of the dumbest things I see, like we want access to money. Okay, cool. So we got companies out there that are doing credit card stacking for people, right? Where they just go out and get them a bunch of credit cards. Well, they're charging those people 9 to 14% of whatever it is they get them approved for. When in reality, if you just opened up one or two cards and you just worked those over 6 months and learned how to manage that credit card, you would be able to exceed the amount that you got approved for all up front. And now you don't have 15 cards that you're trying to manage and keep track of, which certain things for certain people, but the majority of people that I've come across that are running 500 to 3 million businesses, Guess what's gotten them into trouble? Bunch of credit cards,
Mhm.
bunch of loans that they shouldn't have gotten that they didn't know how to manage, right? Because half of our problem is we don't know how to manage things. So that was a big part of like getting me to where I'm at now was like seeing the backside of the machine, if you will, and seeing some of these practices of people that are out there that, we've all fallen for certain companies before where they sound good, look good, and then all of a sudden you get in and start working with them and you're like, something doesn't feel right with the way you're doing things,
Mhm.
right? And that's what we wanted to avoid.
Yep. No, man, I like it, dude. And believe me, the firm understanding of what it's like to hear the fancy words and then you see behind the curtain and then you gotta pull out. But one of the things that like I think is stand up as it is because we saw the same thing back when I had the marketing agency, and then like I'm meeting with business owners. Same thing, just kind of on a personal level, right? Like for what you're doing from the business, I was kind of doing as an entrepreneur, but then taking it personal is like finding out that some of these people just the foundation of what they are building was unstable, right? Which is why like we built a 30-day challenge and why I was so big on like building your mapping out your dream life and figuring out your ikigai and stuff like that. But even to your point, you know, uh, we see these like, these ceilings and first million and then it's like that 3 to 5 or maybe 5 to 7 depending on the industry and then somewhere around 12 to 15 and then it's usually like 25 to 30 like whatever the case is the thing is these companies that you're dealing with and this is just more of if you're listening like understanding the importance of fixing the foundation first. It sucks, but I'd rather you learn this lesson now than a year from now, 5 years from now, add another zero behind, your monthly revenue, whatever the case is, because, add another zero behind the amount of employees you have. It's because those lessons just get way, way, way worse the larger you grow. And once you do hit that ceiling, you will just constantly be like, honestly, you'll be out loaning your previous problems and then you outloan that problem and then you outloan that problem and it's just this vicious cycle. And once you hit that ceiling, like if you truly want to bust through that and say you're doing 7 million and you finally want to break into the 8-figure mark, like you never fucking will if you don't solve these problems first. And I mean, I'm sure you fucking see that all the time with people. Either they got bad business advice because someone was directly attached to something that they provided for them, a product or whatever, or they just never got the fucking information in the first place.
Yep. Yeah,
Um,
it's just a lot of it's just lack of information. Some of it's just trusting but not verifying, staying with something that wasn't the right fit for too long, right? There's any number of things.
yeah, no, for sure. And that kind of goes back to like what you originally mentioned in the very beginning of this, talking about the power of like Uncaged and like being able to share, this type of information because it all comes down to data, right? Like what is the information that we need? And that goes like on honestly holistically, especially like with you and like, people like Howergan and stuff. Like anytime you start to step into the financial literacy, whether that's personal or professional, there's such a gap between average and that top 10%, and then obviously specifically the top 1% or even top 0.1% is, and I genuinely don't think that some of these people are any, let me be careful how I say this, like any smarter than the other. It's the amount of information and context that they've been given access to, which is why I love sharing information like stuff like what you do and anyone else that's in Uncaged that has a true profession and is a true expert in their field, because like if we can all come together and share experiences to your point, oh dude, like it could be unstoppable.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
So
I don't disagree with that, right? Like, and to your point, right, the foundational part of your business, the financials, right? Like, so many of us want to ignore that stuff. And I'll be honest, like, I was joking with Andrew Howard about this the other day, where it's like, you spend so much time teaching other people best practices, and then you neglect yourself, right? And we had that situation. personally, the other month where it's like, man, like how the hell did we do this kind of money and then still feel broke at the end of the month? And you start digging in and looking, you're like, holy shit, like we got a little bit wild with our spending, we got a little bit crazy with this. So it's like, but understanding that that's okay, shit happens, you wind yourself back in, reel it back in, get it tight again. But like our diet, like our health, right? Like you hear this all the time. Like you can't outrun, you can't outwork a shitty diet. It's the same thing in your business. Like you can't outrun, you can't outwork, you can't out earn a shitty financials and a shitty foundation for those financials. Eventually it's going to catch up to you and it's going to fall apart, right? It's like whenever you see people that post or they're just like, oh, just earn more money. It's like, yeah, cool. But if we don't have the basics of this done, all you're going to do is earn your way into an even worse situation.
100%, bro. And that's, and that's again, that's why I like being in Uncaged is because like not only do you get access to that information, but motherfucker, you'll get called out real fucking quick too. Which, it really just puts a spotlight on what needs to be solved. And to your point, like, we were working with a client a couple years ago. Long story short, they wanted us to run a huge advertisement campaign for them. And I was like, listen, like that's top level stuff. Like we got to fix the foundation here. I was like, your conversion rate's fucking horrible. Like it doesn't even, like we have higher than industry standards. I said, but yours doesn't even meet industry standards. And I was like, we got to go through and re-fucking do everything, redo your website and all that. And we gave them a quote on it, and they're like, "Man, that's like 3 times what we paid for it the first time." And I was like, "I can fucking tell, bro." But like, I was like,
Yeah.
"Irregardless, you're spending this money. Why would we not? It's six one way, half a dozen other. You dump as much money into the ads with a shitty conversion rate, or take some of that budget, apply it to solving the problem, and getting a much higher conversion rate on a much less, ad budget. Like it's come on now." And they
Yep.
just refused. And so we ran the first 30 days of advertisements. And due to, because the ads did their responsibility, like the ads sent qualified clients to their site, but the site did not convert. And so we ran the math, and if we had just hit the minimum of industry standards, which was like I think for e-commerce was like 3.5 to 5% conversion rate. If we had just done that, they would more than 10x what our quote for them was. I think it was like 20 grand to redo the website, and they lost due to conversion rate, like drop off and churn, like 220, 225 in one fucking month. And so, like, that was why I was saying, like, for the education that you bring to the table, it's like, dog, like, you start doing some math on a couple of points on a fucking loan of $500,000. That's a
Yeah.
big education moment, man. When you start to really think about, hey, I could pay my boy Paul to help with this, or I could pay this fucking jack off to take my money and
Yeah.
just lock me into another fucking stupid loan when I'm done with
Right.
this one.
Well, right. And it's, we hear Byron talk about this all the time too with like taxes too, right? Like are you willing to pay $5,000 to $10,000 up front for me to save you 4 times whatever you pay me, right? But so often I think one of the curses of just humanity is like we don't want to go through a little bit of pain to get to that better situation. And so we do whatever we can to avert, avoid, you know, same shit with your relationship, same shit with your health, right? Like I'm a Corey Jacobs, I could tell you, I could be like a keynote speaker for somebody that avoids the shit on the personal side, right? But what's funny though is like I'm willing to go through the fires on the business side, but for whatever reason we just haven't connected those dots. But that's just time and consistency and getting through some of those, limiting beliefs, those demons that you fight. And so on the business side, same thing, right? Like you know that there's value out there, but maybe you've been burned before by somebody that called themselves a expert. Maybe you've been burned before by somebody that calls themselves a marketing expert. Maybe you've been burned by whatever, right? Burned by bad loans. So we have an aversion to wanting to get burned again, when in reality, what we're actually doing is we're actually putting that like healing ointment on it. So it might sting a little bit right now, but we're going to make sure that you don't get burned again moving forward. But we have to do that through data, through facts, through information, through case studies, through stories, through all these little things to help connect dots for people. Because if you don't have that, and you don't have the facts to back it up, like then you're not doing anybody injustice, right? Like I just spent time with Dylan, and we were talking about understanding ROI. And if you don't know your financials, how can you ever calculate ROI? And if you don't know your ROI, how can you understand when you're talking to a lender if you're getting yourself into a good loan or not, right? Because you have no idea what you're actually getting a return on that piece of equipment, that whatever it is that you're getting, line of credit doesn't matter, right? If you don't know your financials well enough and you don't know your situation well enough that you can articulate even the basics of like, is this going to give me an a positive result or not, then we probably need to stop and reassess like where our situation is, right? It's like marketing too. Like if you don't know enough to know, is there a good chance that this is going to give me a net positive result? Then I probably need to stop and ask more questions, because at the end of the day, I know you say this all the time, but it's so true. You know, and I learned this in automotive, is like literally any decision you make in your business comes down to a math problem off of your P&L, off of your balance sheets, off of your revenue goals. And if you can't back your way into something and have the numbers make sense, you probably shouldn't be doing it.
100%. No, man. And that's what, obviously I know everyone makes fun of me and Uncaged about it being a math problem, but it's wild to think. Cause for me, it was so long, right? Like, and mind you, so I've been in like quote unquote the marketing industry for like almost 2 decades now. But really this like data side of me, like it was very left brain, right brain. Like when I initially launched the marketing agency, I brought someone in to be my right hand because they thought analytically, whereas I was the creative one, right? Like I was the visionary, they were the integrator. So they were like data, data, data. And I was like, make it sexy, make it sexy, make it sexy, like, and it wasn't until I started to realize that every decision could be made with data that's when I started like getting honestly obsessed with reverse engineering what we want with actual data. And that's where turn it to in everything into a math problem came from. But something you said earlier too about these people like going through shit over and over and over again, and I don't care if it's resiliency, discipline, whatever you want to call it, but like statistically the reason we have to go through bad shit unfortunately is it has to get worse before we will ever get off our ass to make it better, right? It's the whole analogy of the dog laying on the nail. And
Yeah.
so, for me, something that I've been trying to focus on is noticing that discomfort as quickly as possible. Because, like, I don't want it to fucking turn into some monumental fucking issue that crushes me because it's not fucking fun. Like
No.
I've learned very fucking expensive, very fucking painful, and very fucking heartbreaking lessons. And I don't want to go through that again. So it's like the hand on the stove. It's like, all right, cool. Like my hand's getting hot, motherfucker. Like, why does this hurt? How do we solve it? And how do we take our hand off as quickly as possible? So I think
Yep.
you're fucking spot on. And I know you see that all the time with these businesses. Or
Yeah.
and maybe they're actually like maybe they don't you see it, but they don't see it.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of it, right? Like you don't see what you don't see, you don't know what you don't know. It's the box of learning, right? Like we are incompetent and ignorant until we become aware of something, and now all of a sudden we're aware of it, but we can still be incompetent because we choose not to do or take action of it, right? Like, and that's honestly, in my opinion, that's like the worst place to be. And I'll admit that's where I am with my health right now. It's like I'm aware of the issues, I'm aware of the pain, I'm aware of where I want to go, but I'm choosing to be incompetent, right? And I'll openly admit that because I think it's important for people to admit that part. Like I'm very well aware right now that I'm choosing incompetence on my health. And part of the excuses I'm making is because we're going through some big growth in the business and it's adding a lot of stuff onto my plate. When in reality, you just need to, dig into those things and work your way through them to a point of you're no longer in this incompetent stage. You're in this like conscious, competent stage of like, what's going on? How am I dealing with this? What am I doing to make sure that this doesn't happen again and make sure that we fix this spot? But so often it's so easy. We talk about comfort, right? And our natural, like our brain's desire. This is PQ. I'm going through a PQ thing again with positive intelligence, but our brain has this natural desire to want to go back to where it's the most comfortable, right?
Yep.
Like that's just our natural, like fight or flight, like response. And so how do you become aware of like when that stuff is starting to happen where you're like, okay, like I'm falling into this like routine again where I go hard on this and then I'm get like 3, 4 weeks in, 5, 6 weeks in, maybe even 7, 8 weeks in, and then things start to fall apart and things start to slide. I need to catch it the minute that I start the slide and make sure that I don't go through that. And you're never going to be perfect at it initially, right? But it's always just about making sure that that gap and that time frame from when you start noticing it to when you catch it and fix it just keeps shrinking over time to the point where you end up being like a Jacob Staller, where you just keep, pushing through every single day, no matter what. It's just every single day, it's the same thing. It's just discipline, it's muscle memory, it's habit. You've retrained your brain.
Yeah.
But we're all at different stages, and it's okay to be where you're at right now. What's not okay is to continue to choose to stay where you're at when you know that it's not benefiting you. That's when it becomes no longer an okay thing to do. And I wish more people would realize that with their finances, with their relationships, with their like personal financial, it's like health, everything. Like just be better, right? So and you can do that just by simply tracking things a lot of times, right? Because that's how you know where the breakdowns are, right? It comes again, it's so stupid, but it literally comes down to math. Like real quick, like our car dealership, when I was running our car dealership, our marketing, I had that stuff so dialed in from a money standpoint that I knew it would cost me somewhere between like 275 to $290 per car for marketing leads sold, right? So that's like from the time somebody landed on our website, when they viewed cars, to the time they purchase. So when you start reverse engineering this stuff, I knew at the end of the month, hey, we're really close to our monthly goal. If I drop $2,500, I'm going to move 4 more cars and we're going to hit our goal. Or, hey, marketing hasn't been converting the way it usually is because I'm tracking my numbers. We're going to keep that marketing spend in-house till the next month. And then when we're going to start next month, we're going to make the adjustments and we're going to pop the top off of this thing because I know that the additional spend is going to get us over the hump. So if you're not tracking that stuff and you don't have the data to track it, like that's why people feel like they can never make decisions. Because what are you making your decision off of? Emotions? Well, that's the worst place to be making decisions from ever. So,
100%.
you know,
No, I mean 100%. And that's like, even to your point, like, okay, understanding like falling off. It's like if you were to like have some sort of data, and what do you try? I don't know, a journal, a calendar. I don't know, because the thing is, like, all right, on average, someone experiences 10% of their month as like as a bad day. All right. That means 3 fucking days out of the month, are going to fucking suck. And so it's like, when we start tracking this stuff, to your point, it's like, how do we understand what is throwing us off our game? What solves the problem? And what maybe, to your point about the gym, it's like, I was in it for 6 or 8 weeks. Business started getting crazy again. So I slacked off. It's like, but if you look back and you're like, it never had anything to do with the gym or my physical health, because honestly, if I had stayed in the gym, I probably wouldn't have gone through it as long or as bad, because just everything mentally, physically, the way it attributes over to your business and personal life. But you were like, all right, cool, like I know that, like, a I'm gonna business is gonna continue to have some sort of issues that's gonna pull my attention, but I know, hindsight, that like slacking off in the gym is not the fucking answer. And also, like, another thing that's really cool is like being in groups like this, where there is like extreme accountability, and literally just talking about what we just explained. It's like, all right, for someone like yourself, it's like, all right, I know I should be in the gym more. I know I should be taking it more serious, but like yada, 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 like excuse, excuse, excuse. It's like, all right, well, unfortunately, sometimes things have to get worse before they get better. You know this, and you're ignoring it. So now you're going to get sick, or you're going to get hurt, or something's going to put you in the hospital, and you're going to be like, motherfucker, like, no, now I'm going to cut out all the bad shit and I'm going to get back to exercising, right? Like, I was reading Chris Keeley's post about, how he stopped drinking. Like, it originally started because of a medical scare. And so he had to stop drinking for a certain amount of time, and then he just kind of never went back. But it's like shit like that like comes up, where it's like, I'll be it, and it might not even be something, in your own life, but like I had to look internally on what I was doing and what my quote unquote legacy looked like, after losing my granddad and Dr. B on the same day at the beginning of the year, I was like, fuck, man, like,
Yeah.
this sucks. Let me get inner perspective real fast and spent, several weeks, like, how can I improve myself? Because like, these are lessons that I'm learning, whether or not like it's like a big fucking sign that says, hey, this is a lesson for Zach Williams. Like, these are opportunities for me to learn. And I would much rather learn them like that. Well, fuck. I mean, I don't want to learn it like this, but I'd much rather learn it like that than, it being something catastrophic to myself,
100%.
and lose that opportunity. But, yeah, man, dude, I appreciate you for hanging out with us, man. This has been a great conversation. What can, if someone's listening and want to continue a conversation with you, obviously you can reach out to myself or anyone on the Uncaged team. We'll be more than happy to connect you with Paul. But like, how can people connect with you? What can we do to pay you back for the time that you spent here with us today?
Yeah, obviously Facebook, just look me up, Small Childers on Facebook. I'm pretty easy to find on there. Same with LinkedIn. Just shoot me a DM, reach out. You can go to our website, blueskybizsolutions.com. And that, just reach out on there, reach out on Facebook, DM me. Those are probably the two easiest ways to get a hold of me. And if you're just in a spot where you feel like you don't really have any other answers and you aren't liking the answers that you're getting from some of the people that you're talking to, maybe that's an accountant, maybe it's a financial planner, maybe it's a loan officer, whatever, like that's the perfect time to come and talk to us because there might be things that they're not even aware of or not thinking about or not looking into that might make the most sense to get you, fixed and back in place from a business standpoint that they're missing, right? Like that's probably one of the biggest things of feedback that I get is our willingness and our ability to think inside the gray area and live inside the gray area outside of the box, if you will, probably is one of our biggest strengths because there is no black or white when it comes to running a business and your financials. Like everybody's situation is a little bit different, and you need somebody that can open you up to those different intangibles.
100%, bro. Well, man, I really appreciate it, guys. Like I said, reach out to Paul if y'all need anything. I'm telling you, we work with him. He's an incredible dude in and out, personally and professionally. So reach out to him. If you can't find him for whatever odd reason, reach out to myself again or anyone else on the Uncaged team. We'll point you in the right direction. If you are in Uncaged, he ain't fucking hard to find. So appreciate it, Paul, and we'll talk to you guys soon.